Welcome to the gaze, everybody. Let's have a look. Today we'll be looking at we're putting this as like an episode that focuses on education. Very broad topic, but for now we'll be focusing on sort of the after effects of lockdown on particularly on students and as well as educators. 'Cause I myself am an educator.
Yes. So for this episode, we will be focusing on the aftermaths of COVID with, like Mig said, going to be students and educators, and then also what we're dubbing as No Child Left Behind. This is no way affiliated to George Bush's 2002 bill in the U.S. That's just what we're dubbing it as because that's kind of what the vibe is. But anyways, for anybody who is just meeting us, my name is Tree. I go by they them.
And I'm Migs. I go by he him.
Welcome to the case.
And before we start, just as a little disclaimer, the views and opinions of the hosts and speakers are their own. They do not represent particular schools, school divisions, or school boards, education ministries, or any related public entities. All right, with that out of the way, let's dive into it. So we'll take a look at sort of the more generalized aftermath of COVID. What have been the good or bad things that have happened to both students and educators alike?
Yep.
What are some things that we could have kept from before lockdown that we kind of gave up on? And what are some of the things that we've embraced during lockdown that we also maybe given up on?
Yeah.
To the good, in my experience, and again, I didn't do my research on sort of the positives that have come out of lockdown measures and that kind of thing. I didn't focus on that because I'm a Debbie Downer. The biggest thing that I've seen is that there's an increased awareness of mental health challenges for students. Like teachers are advised to be a little bit more lenient in terms of attendance, student tardiness, because we understand that there have been many challenges that have popped up or have been brought to light because of the pandemic. So that's it's a good thing that we're being cognizant as educators of our students, struggles and challenges and that kind of thing.
Just a disclaimer, his point of view is going to be different from mine, not just because we're two different people, but because I'm post-secondary, he's in grade school, high school, around that area. So his is gonna be more stricter than mine.
Public education. Right? I'm in public education.
So it's gonna be two different vibes that we're gonna be having. Yeah.
Which is a good thing. The second positive thing that I've seen come out of lockdown measures has been we're trying our best to incorporate more technology into the class and just in overall pedagogy. Integrating more into particularly Google Classroom or Microsoft Teams and that kind of thing. Putting homework there instead of handing out always paper copies or whatever. Communicating with students is a big thing. That's because for the longest time, if you were in teacher education, you would always tell the incoming teachers, don't text your students or don't communicate with them in informal ways. And it's okay, how are we supposed to do that? And then now we have a tool to
do it, but in a more professional setting.
In a less personal setting, which is a good thing. Apart from that, stuff like Kahoot, which always it's always a good time for
everybody.
For everybody. Stuff like that gets integrated into classroom learning. I'm really glad that COVID kind of jump started that movement. And the last the last good point that I have is that during COVID we realized that we have to be flexible with the attendance, especially in light of online learning. So there is the possibility of more blended or hybrid options. Not everybody has to be in school all the time. Right? And that's kind of, again, that goes back to the incorporating more of the
technology into it.
Because some days maybe you can't be at school for whatever reason, or you would rather not be in school but you still want to learn as a student, right? And that you at least should be given the option to
learn at your own pace.
Learn at your own pace. Exactly. So those are the good points that I've got.
I don't have any good points.
Okay.
in that sense, it's like my good point is similarly to yours. The implementation of hybrid is, at least for me, the most impressive thing that I really appreciated as somebody who does need syncrasy learning. I thrive well in that rather than like the synchronous one. That being implemented and like my program being an actual hybrid program, because it made it easier for me for this term to um just get through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just get through it. So yeah, that's really the only thing that I can think of, because when COVID hit, I wasn't in schools. I was in the hospitals. Not as a, not as a nurse, not as a nurse, but I was one of the healthcare admin workers. But yeah,
Mm. So again, disclaimer again, different perspectives, right? I'm
yeah.
I'm in a more rigid sort of public school like setting, while Tree is in more
Do whatever the fuck you want to do.
it's
Just
it's
get.
it's private, right? It's private post secondary.
No, it's not private.
Oh, just kidding. It's still post secondary. They're a lot more
Yeah,
flexible
yeah,
in post
yeah.
secondary.
It's
So
like yeah, it's most it's post secondary, so they're more like do whatever the hell you want. Just hand in your shit. Don't hand in your shit. That's
right,
fine.
yeah, because you're adults and we expect you to act like it, even
Mm-hmm.
though some of y'all aren't
Yep.
acting like it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Anyways, we're moving on to the fun part.
yeah.
What are the repercussions that had happened with COVID?
Yeah. Okay. So more of the bad stuff. This is where I kind of focus a little bit more on with academic research. So the bad things that I both researched and have like seen in schools.
Yeah.
Number one is that students in general are very much behind, like
Oh yeah.
more so than ever before in terms
Yeah.
of like literacy, numeracy.
Like arithmetic and
Mm-hmm.
literacy. That's something that's kind of being echoed in social media as well.
Mm.
Because even my side of TikTok, they were like, yeah, these kids don't know how to fucking count.
No.
They don't know how to do
No.
math. They don't know how to.
They don't know how to do proper sentence structure. They
They're
can't write
just
paragraphs.
like incredibly behind.
Yeah.
And I really like this this analogy that this one TikToker that I came across to. I'll try to find her, but I probably won't. I do apologize, but the way that they described it is pre-COVID, kids were learning how to build houses. They were learning how to build the foundation of a house. After COVID, when they went back to quote unquote normal, kids are expected to build skyscrapers. Like that's how big of a difference the learning is.
Yeah.
Like right now, I don't know if you would agree with that analogy, but like it put it into perspective like how far the gap is, because if you're not in school, especially if you're not in elementary school, then it's going to be different, right?
Yeah, that I understand the analogy. The only thing that's missing is that like the students have also changed in that analogy. Is that like they're not only expected to build a skyscraper, but they're also expected to build a skyscraper with a hammer and a nail.
Yeah, they don't have the tools for it.
No.
Like they don't, like all they learned was the foundation of a house, not a foundation of a fucking skyscraper. And they don't have the tools to actually build upon those things.
No, and to that point as well is that on the whole, it like the achievement gaps are also they've widened as well
Mm-hmm.
because the students who performed not as well before COVID are performing even worse now,
That's
and
so
it's
sad.
much worse. Like the disparity is much worse between
Yeah.
different students as well. I from Janice Aurini and Scott Davies in their paper that they wrote for the National Library of Medicine. I quote, predictions suggest that the 2020 school closures likely generated learning shortfalls of approximately 4 months among average performing Canadian students, losses of 7 months among lower performers, and almost certainly widened pre-existing achievement gaps by large amounts. End quote.
Yeah. So yours focused on Canada. For me, I actually got an article written for the Harvard magazine, and they did a study. It was a very interesting read for me, and I feel like educators out there would find it interesting as well. We'll have all of the articles linked as always down below. And one of the things that they said was pre-COVID, there were implications placed in the school system to improve that gap, to like lessen the gap. All of that implementation because of COVID just completely decimated the improvement that had happened and worsened the gap even more. And they made a point that like it's much even worse for marginalized students as well. So students of color, students with disability, whether
For lower income families.
yeah,
Yeah.
lower income
Yeah.
families, they have it so much more worse than everybody else just because they're already starting at a 50 feet behind everybody else
Yeah.
to begin with, right?
Yeah, and again, that just widened the gap between those that were doing okay, and then
Yeah.
those who were like further back.
Yeah, their findings found that students are behind 1.5 years in math. Yeah, and a third of a year in reading, which is that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. And
that's a
that
lot.
was on the disadvantaged students already.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh
Yeah.
no, that was just
Or that was just general,
that was
and
just
like
general.
disadvantaged students are just like worse off than
They
that.
didn't they didn't present the findings in the article when I read it. I'm just like, well, it's already 1.5 years behind
For
in
like for
math.
normally achieving students. Yikes.
Ooh, yeah, that when I read that, I'm just like, shit.
Yeah. The bell curve has now become, what's the word? It's
It's
stretched out.
widening. It's
It's
widening.
stretched out.
She is widening.
Yeah.
And another one that contributed to it is like the mental health of students are being affected so much so that whatever wasn't there is there. Whatever was there is exacerbated.
Yeah, that's
And
exactly it.
the more I looked into the aftermath of COVID with students and educators, the more I feel bad for everybody, not just in the US, not just in the Canada, like kind of like everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
because there's no nice way of me saying this, but you're setting these children up for failure,
Yeah.
big time.
And not in a productive way either. Like,
No, like the society's not even set up to catch these kids like
Yeah.
that. You guys are just setting them up for failure, period. And like, I don't know, it's like the sociology side of me that's like peeping through is like I'm just interested to see how these kids will perform later down the line and how will it manifest society wise, and are we going to have another dip with like more vulnerable community, like is it going to expand a bit more than we would have liked because of this,
short answer, probably yeah.
right?
Yeah, and like to your point too, is that it's good that you mentioned mental health, because like again, that's the second observation that I like observed, like on my own experience, is that like students on the whole just have like no motivation. They have no resilience.
No,
They
none whatsoever from what I'm hearing.
no, and like there's um an increased sense in students, or like you can feel it. Like
Yeah.
they don't have to say it. It's just that like more so now than before.
Mhm.
They don't want to be there. They think it's completely pointless
Yeah.
to learn about whatever. And I'm generalizing. And they probably just think that like, oh, I could just like go
Osmosis,
viral and
yeah.
I will be well, or something like that.
Or like osmosis your knowledge through it,
Yeah.
like, which is weird. It's okay. I really like this quote that I read from the article by Kane. Uh, he said students aren't catching up. Students aren't catching up. They're not losing any more ground, but they're not catching up. Like
No.
it again. It just places it into perspective what this what the education system is placing upon the kids. And as somebody who has who went through some shit, especially with education, and like has a complicated, we'll put it that way, complicated relationship with academics, I feel for these kids so much. Because at the flip side of me having complicated relationship with academics, I love education. I love about learning things. Look at all my hyperfixation. I can talk to them. You guys can wait for that later. Because I love learning, but like just because of how the system is placed, it just makes it not enjoyable for me to be in it.
No.
It especially in a more like quote unquote prestigious level like university or like even higher than that. It doesn't make it more you don't get the gratification of it all, especially not just the education system, but also like how society treats like the humanities
Yeah.
in general,
Yeah.
which are like the most academic oriented, at least courses that are presented out there.
Mm-hmm. That's for another episode.
Yeah, that's for another episode, like STEM versus humanities, bitch. Oh, okay.
But yeah. So all this to say that like students are just they're checked out, like mentally, physically, whatever. It's like they go to school because their parents drop them off, and then they do
Or it's
shit
mandated because
all.
yeah, or it's because it's mandated to
It's
where they
mandated
live.
to attend until high school. Yeah.
Yeah, to wherever they live, whether that be state, province, whatever the fuck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've got a quote here from in interviewing. I think it was in Toronto. School teachers. Jessica Wong writes for CBC. Quote: There may be students who have seen their earlier connections to school, friends, extracurricular groups, and teams, mentors, fade away amid the pandemic. End quote. And like that to me is like the biggest thing, because it's like we were in lockdown for a reason,
Yeah.
good reason, but then that just took away, where kids socialize. That's where kids,
Yeah.
for most of their early years, is that you go to school, you make your friends, you do your extracurriculars, and that's where you spend the majority of your day. That's where you make your friends. That's where you make friends that that last basically for a while.
Yeah, and I'm actually really happy you brought that up because I was going to bring it up. The social and emotional skills that these kids do not have, it shows.
Yeah.
It shows that they don't have the skills to like socialize and like emotionally like process their emotions. And it's like really sad because being in your teenage years is hard enough.
Mhm.
Like it's already hard enough in the base level, but for it to be like for more stuff to be added on there where it's you don't know how to approach a person properly, you don't know how to process this emotion properly because you don't have that socialization, not just with your friends but also sometimes with your teachers or like other grown-ups other than your parents.
Right.
Like that creates such I don't know what the word is. Um,
It again, it sets you up for failure, because
it sets you up for failure and it sets up like a bubble around you in terms of like criticism, in terms of advice, in terms of again all of these like interpersonal relationship skills that you need to be learning, especially at these ages because it's the easiest because you see the same people over and over again, right? But like with the pandemic, they lost 2 years.
yeah, exactly.
Holy fuck, 2 years.
Yeah.
Holy shit, 2 years. They lost
Yeah.
2 years.
And it was on and off too, right?
Yeah, especially like oh my god, the fact that like people can't fucking keep it straight whether we're doing asynchronous or synchronous is like I can't even like imagine how hard it is for the
Yeah.
students.
Yeah, that goes back to like again what we were saying about student resiliency. Nothing, because
Yeah.
again, you put it perfectly. They live in these bubbles where it's like they're either coddled by their parents, or at worst they're abused and neglected,
Yeah.
and like they have no gauge as to how to actually interact with other people.
Yeah, because they don't have that backing. It's sad because the boomers keeps on complaining. Why does everybody have anxiety and depression? I'm like, bitch, look what happened. What do you mean? This
Yeah.
is like
Were we not on the same planet? Were we not? Actually, no. You know what?
we
Y'all
weren't-
didn't
we
follow
weren't-
mask mandates. It's your
Yeah, we weren't apparently. We were not. We were very much not.
no.
But like the rise of people identifying or like being diagnosed with anxiety and depression, it's not even a rise. It's more of like back in the day, there wasn't a lot of left-handed. I am left-handed, and when they lifted the ban or like the stigmatization, I guess, of people being left-handed, all of a sudden you see a lot of people being left-handed, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna see that with mental illness,
Mm-hmm.
with lack of social skills, and like you guys cannot tell me that like oh it's trendy. It is not trendy. The cards were put into place and it's just being played.
The president was set that like it's actually okay to talk about these things and that kind of
Yeah.
thing, right? And like we said with episode 1, it's not so much a trend as it is like we're just putting a name to something people have been doing or
Mhm.
people have been identifying with
Yeah.
for eons.
Yeah.
And like speaking of like boomer complaints, it's like nobody wants to work anymore. It's like
How are we gonna work in this economy? Some people are working 3 jobs and still not being able to like make ends meet. Like it's atrocious out here. Let's not even talk about the housing market. Oh Jesus! Like the renting.
what's a house?
Like the renting.
We'll never own that in my lifetime.
Like the renter space. Even at the renter space, it's brutal out there. It
Mhm.
really truly is brutal
Honestly.
out there. And like again, if anybody's complaining the fact that like nobody wants to work, we're not getting paid properly.
We're not getting paid enough. If you're young enough, you don't have the social skills.
And all of a sudden an entry job needs 32 years of experience. Make it make sense.
Why do I need a master's degree to flip a burger?
Why do I need a
Exaggeration.
PhD? Why do I need a doctorate to do all of these things? And like just kind of keeping on this tangent because I was going to be in the humanities. A bachelor's degree doesn't say anything anymore in the workplace. You need like a master's.
Mm.
That's the new standard, and that's just going to keep going up and up because education is fucked right now. It really is. It's rough. It's rough out there.
I have 2 bachelor's degrees. I'm barely making it. Drink, dude.
Don't got any, bitch.
I don't. Yeah.
Going back on that topic, the article that I read actually presented a solution. No, it was a different article that I read.
Oh, okay.
Presented a solution to post-pandemic repercussions.
Okay.
So one of the like they listed a number of solutions, which if you read them, it's like, isn't this supposed to be common sense? I feel like it's common sense for it to be implemented, but again, I'm not an educator. I'm just a student.
Common sense isn't that common, clearly.
One of them is pedagogy that is student-centered, and that's not like work-centered. They also listed inquiry-based, authentic, and purposeful. That's what the pedagogy thing that they wanted to say. They also said that delivery of instructions should be capitalized on the students' strengths. So either asynchronicity or synchrony. Those are the main points that I saw that I was like, these are the most interesting thing. And that's written by Zhao and Watterson. Again, all articles are going to be down below. It's like, for me, when I read it, I'm like, oh, this isn't getting implemented, like, especially after what happened. Like, I'm in a different level of education. For us, it's kind of like, yeah, we might as well just implement it to them, right? Like, for post-secondary, just like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, just make it asynchronicity. That's fine.
Yeah, and like again, the trouble with public school is it's very there's like rules that you have to follow. There's regulations, and like we went over this in like my education courses. Is that you have there's stakeholders that that you have to be held accountable for. The students, their parents or their families, the community at large, the government.
That's way too much for teachers.
It's public school.
That's way too much for teachers. I read when I was reading up on when we had to mix up with the no child left behind. I actually read an article by Vox about No Child Left Behind. They actually pointed it out that like basically what the system is pushing towards teachers is you need to be a miracle worker for you to be remotely okay at this job. And I'm just like, they're humans. They're humans. They're humans. They're fucking humans. I don't know how many times I need to say this. They are not Jesucristo. Okay.
No. And that's the thing is that like they put all of this on us and then they cut our budgets and take all our resources away.
Yeah, take all the resources away, cut all of the budget, but yeah, give it to the
make
cops.
sense, please. Yeah, give it to the cops. Yeah, sure. A fucking cop in the classroom is gonna help me out. Sure.
Yeah.
Is he qualified? Is he gonna be an EA for my students? No.
It's not like he's and
He'll shoot first and ask questions later.
and he's definitely not gonna scare the people of color in the fucking room.
Shit, I'd be
I
scared
was
as a person of color.
Absolutely fucking not.
Yeah.
But when I saw that, it again because different setting, and I'm just like, these really aren't implemented. It wasn't ideal, but I guarantee you, some students really did thrive in COVID, having it like in Google Teams in Google Classroom
And Microsoft Drive.
Yeah, and Microsoft Drive and Outlook. Like I'm pretty
Linux Outlook.
But then forcing them back into, especially again, mental illness. We're not thinking about like the mental
Yeah.
spaces that the kids are in. That's just a lot. That's a lot of flip flop within like what, 5 years? Even less than 5 years?
So no wonder these kids are like, what the hell's the point? Like y'all can't even make up your minds. Why should I be forced into doing what you want me to do, right? Because
Yeah.
that's at the end of it. That's what it all boils down to. Is that like
Yeah.
at least in public school education, like it's the government forcing kids to go back to school if some of them don't want to.
Yeah, in
That's
person as well.
yeah, and like again, some like you said, some kids thrive during COVID, or some kids were at least okay with like the asynchronous portions of it. I mean, not everybody is, but
Mhm.
like, why are we just catering to? That's the problem. Is that like, as much as we want to talk about, and like, I wanted to make a comment when you were saying like all those things about like inquiry-based learning and
Mhm.
like student-centered pedagogy. That's
Mhm.
literally what they pound into our heads
But
for
then
education. But then we can't fucking implement it because
you don't have
like
the resources,
I
you
don't
don't
have
have
the
the funding.
we don't have the resources, we don't have the funding, we have the curriculum, we have the stakeholders that we have to appease, that are like again, it's the regulations that are it's the government that tells us we have to do this and this, we have to do these kinds of like assessments, these kinds of achievements to work towards, because like at least where we live, it's in public school, that what you work towards is the grade 12 provincials,
Mhm.
which we'll talk more about later, because it's a whole thing, especially during the
Pandemic.
pandemic. But yeah, when you were mentioning again the inquiry based learning and student centered pedagogies, that kind of thing, again, pounded into my brain from teacher education courses. Only trouble is we can't implement them. As like we can try on like a smaller scale,
Yeah.
but it's very hard to not follow the traditional classroom model, especially when resources are constrained and there isn't enough manpower, or like um and there isn't enough teachers, there aren't enough EAs for sure to like help us implement that in the classroom. So that's also another hurdle that nobody talks about. Yes, they are supposedly common sense, but implementing them is a whole different thing. Unfortunately. So I just want to like finish off this portion of it by like mentioning stuff that I feel we should have kept from either before COVID, or stuff that we should have kept like because of lockdown measures. So
Mhm.
stuff that we could have like brought back. That
Hybrid.
yeah,
Hybrid.
hybrid learning.
I'm the biggest like advocator for hybrid learning. I understand it's not for everybody. Again, for me, it's very much like a good thing for me. But so my sister's boyfriend actually goes to the same school as I do, but he's in a different program. His is still in person. They only have one hybrid class. That's it. And I asked him, I'm like, oh, because my program is like completely hybrid, yours isn't. Do you prefer it that way? He was like, yeah, it's cool for one class, but not for all of them. He's in engineering, by the way. So like, it's gonna be different for what coursework you're doing and what the student thrives in,
Mm-hmm.
right? And again, for hybrid, it's such a flexible way of just delivering content to students, and they're able to like cater it to themselves. If the teachers don't have the manpower to like cater it for them, let them do it for themselves.
Yeah.
That's one, I feel like that's one way of like teaching them independence as well, especially if you're gonna go into like post secondary.
Mm-hmm.
The big drastic difference between high school and post secondary is fucking jarring.
Yeah. Exactly. And like again, uh, it goes back to inclusion as well, because like are we not supposed to try to be accommodating of all students' needs and not just the middle of the bell curve? Like that's the
Yeah.
whole point, isn't it? But then I feel as if personally that I'm well, I mean, I like I don't have my own classroom,
Mm-hmm.
but from what I've observed is that like, teachers are either set in their ways to that kind of like
No, you're coming into the class.
yeah, or either that, or they're like we're regulating them too. Because again, I understand the socialization aspect of it,
Yeah.
but like at least to provide the flexibility of, and again, I'm not saying that like I know how to implement this. It's just that it would be nice if we were given the option to have that flexibility for the students.
Yeah, options. Just give students options. Honestly, as much as we're saying that students are very behind, they're still very intuitive to how they want to like learn and
Yeah.
like how they want to like get the content that they need to pass.
Yeah, kids are smart. They can figure stuff out, but to force them into, here's the thing. Maybe the reason why I feel so like appalled by it, like how I feel about the education system as it is right now, is that like no matter how flowery the language we make on inquiry based learning or universal design or fucking activate, acquire, apply, all those things, great. But the entire system is modeled on the fact that it's supposed to be one size fits most. Like you know those hats that you get at like the hat store and that kind of thing, like lids, like the snapbacks and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
Like and it says one size fits most.
yeah.
That's what the education system is as it is right now. It's just that we have these buzzwords that are like, oh, let's do this, and then we can't actually implement them. So that is a big draw for it,
Yeah.
for it, and a reason why really we can't really have what we're supposed to have. But yeah, something that I feel we could have kept from before lockdown was, and I'll get into this in a second, because this is going to be a general kind of thing, grading. Like
Okay.
in terms of, okay, in a sense that we need to actually uphold standards and not just try
Oh,
and push
past the
everybody
kids.
through. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And not
Yeah.
just push everybody through or be arbitrary about or punitive about grades. I mean, that
This is
was
where the no child left behind.
this is where that
Yeah.
comes in. Yeah, yeah. And like before, the problem was with grading is that like some of it felt kind of punitive. Like we were just assigning grades because, oh, you didn't do this according to how I feel you're supposed to be doing it. But nowadays it's a little more lax. Not for everybody, but I feel as if it's now too lax,
Yeah.
that we're excusing basically these kids who are, they have no motivation, whatever. Okay, that's fine. But also, why are we passing or moving them on when they do have not clearly acquired the skills that are necessary that we've outlined in the curriculum?
You know, it's funny that you brought that up because that happened to me.
Yeah.
I got passed on. Thankfully, it was at the end of high school already, but it was when I was, I think, in grade 11 or 12. That was the time where depression took a hold and me not having the language that I have now and having the knowledge that I know now. I wasn't there completely in a really good way. And I'm pretty sure this was already in grade 11 because I had to go to grade 12. So in one of the classes, I had to do a project and I remember it, but I don't remember what the course was. It was, I wanted to make like this crime scene box where it has like evidence and like basically research, but like make it cute. So because I was not in a good place, I kept on like pushing it back and not actually doing it. And then I kept on giving excuses to the teacher. I'm just like, oh, I lost this, or I did that. And then at the end of the term or semester, I don't remember, she was like, it's okay. I'll just pass you. Yeah.
Oh. Was
Yeah.
Do you remember if it was like a core subject or anything like that?
I think it was an elective. I don't
Mm.
remember. I don't remember. I don't remember.
Interesting.
But it's more, I don't. So when you say like just pass them along, I've had that experience before. It was very clear to everybody that something was wrong with me because I came here as a fob. And academics in the Philippines is a lot more stricter here there than here. So I was able to be the shining.
You're now the outstanding student.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
the outstanding student, and to fall from grace like that, everybody notices, right? So they kind of just passed me along. I was talking to the guidance counselor. I don't know if he was disclosing anything to the other teachers because he was my homeroom teacher as well.
Ah.
Yeah, he was the guidance counselor and he was the homeroom teacher. I don't know.
Resources. Please.
Yeah. Thankfully enough, I was able to kind of set myself up for grade 12 that like I only needed to take like 3 subjects. That's it for the entire school year and then I'll be set to go. I would have graduated already. It's like a love. I don't know. It's a complicated situation for me because yes, I got passed through the system. Yes, I was able to set myself up, but at the same time I wasn't at a good place. And so I got thrown into post secondary not having a really good foundation under me, and then I went to the hospital. We'll leave it at that. And it. So I understand what you're saying about like let's just pass them through the grade, and I say it's complicated because I'm thankful that they passed that they passed like quote unquote passed me, but at the same time resources could have been like given to me, and the school did try to like support me as much as possible, because I told them that I'm not very good academic wise, even though to them it's like, bitch, you're smart.
Yeah.
And I told him like, oh, I want to be a photographer. One of the other guidance counselor actually like came to me with like photography brochures,
Nice.
classes, and I was like, oh, I fucking gotten like and different schools that I can take that are like kind of fine arts
Mm-hmm.
oriented.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was like, I could never do this. I'm an Asian fucking immigrant.
We're immigrants.
Yeah, but like looking back at it now, she was doing the best that she can, and it's complicated to me because I'm able to move forward, right? But at the same time, the resources wasn't there for them and wasn't here for me. Again, if a different person was in my position, I don't even know what route their life would have taken.
No, and like that's kind of my point as well. Is that like yes, we should not be so lenient in grading, but also we should have resources in place to support students otherwise failing.
Yeah.
That's my point to it, really. Well, again, we'll get more into that later, but that's what I mean when I say we should be keeping our standards up as well, um, but with the resources attached to it to help make it so. And like one last thing that we should have kept from the pandemic, masking. And like, okay, mask mandates may be hard to implement as
Yeah.
much as I want them to, but like,
Clearly.
masking when you're sick, like teaching kids to mask when you're sick, that's something the community should be modeling. A.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, cause what is it? Why the hell are we getting flu season again? I thought we learned. Apparently not.
You're giving them way too much credit.
I listen. I am an October Libra and I'm an educator. What do you want?
Nothing.
Okay, so let's move it on now to, but like we said, this isn't the U.S. Bush bill, but we're calling it this because I have no other fucking name for this policy.
It's the best way to like describe what's happening.
Yeah, and it's like, it's the thinking of like, no child should be left behind. Woo. And like again, it goes back to that like what we said about
Just passing people along.
just passing people along and like no, we should have standards. But yeah, this policy that was like implemented like early days of lockdown. This was like pretty much 4 years to the week. Okay. But yeah, it's the policy that saw everyone sort of like be moved on
Mm-hmm.
because we were like, pandemic, we have to lock down.
Yeah.
Even though we don't want to. Because like, what is it? I was in like, I was still in music at that time. I was in my 3rd year and I was gearing up for like, hopefully what was supposed to have been like the best like, jury of my career at that point. But no, everyone's like, no, juries are canceled. Like juries are like our final thing for voice or like for music. So those are canceled. I know final exams are canceled in schools. The provincial exams were like canceled.
No clue.
No, and like you know what? In hindsight, sure, that kind of everyone was like, "Yay, no assessments," but it kind of gave us nothing to do.
But at the same, like that, and I feel like it gave s- teachers no basis to how their students are actually doing.
No,
Like, so when quote unquote everything goes back to normal, they have no idea
where do we pick
whatsoever
up? Where do we pick up from
like
here?
where is everybody standing. It's been 2 years.
Yeah.
As much as I do not like standardized tests, they're fucking annoying as fuck, and the way that you guys help in the education system hold them up is like atrocious majority of the time.
Mhm.
But that's for a different one. Um, it's a good gauge of how teachers will see where the student is,
Yeah.
right? when they got rid of that, at least from what I'm hearing, is like you're just crippling the teachers even fucking more
Yep.
when they're already like down on the floor with two broken femurs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sure. It was useful at the first stages of the pandemic when we were like, we don't know what to do. But like the longer it went on, that kind of just again sets students up for failure. Because like, what are the standards now? Nobody fucking knows. Like we're not allowed to have these finals. We're not allowed to have this and that. Eventually, slowly things started to return. Like those things started to return. But I don't think, in my opinion, fast enough. And like even like when I was doing my practicum for like when I was in education, it was still kind of lingering. Where this is where I first heard about this like policy where
Yeah.
as teachers we're not allowed to fail students if they are at a 32 cumulatively from the work or the attendance that they've been doing in class. We had to bump them up to 50.
What?
I didn't have to do it personally because again I was a student teacher. I was marginalized in different ways. Yeah, I heard tell of that policy. I don't remember if it was in the board that I was doing my practicum in at the time, but I heard about it and I'm like,
It's all right.
that no. And like again, the longer it went on, it kind of was really for me the catalyst of why we have such low motivation in students nowadays,
Yeah.
right? Because it's like again, it goes back to what's the point? What are you working towards? Nothing.
Because you didn't give them goals to work towards to.
That and like we're showing them by bumping them up to the 50 when they clearly do not deserve it, really.
Yeah.
Is that like, oh, no matter what, you'll get your thing. Just you don't even have to do anything, which again sets them up for failure in the workplace,
In the workplace
in
and in
society?
post-secondary and like,
post-secondary.
whatever they want to do after high school without the coddling that high school gives you.
Yeah, and that's what all it is that they're coddling them for no good reason, really.
Yeah.
I don't know what the mandate is on student achievement in Canada or any of the provinces.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's not a measure we could have been taking to boost the the graduation rates or like the assessment rates or the average score. I don't think that's the right or sustainable way to do that. Whatever it is, again, I
Yeah.
didn't do research on that, but
Yeah.
I know that that's a thing probably in the States. So yeah, again, students nowadays feel like they're checked out, they're disengaged, despite the fact that a lot of these final assessments are turning. Like I think it was this year that they've re-implemented, or for this school year that they've re-implemented provincials. Because I was subbing in for a couple of teacher friends at different schools during, I think it was like January when they were having I think it was the English provincial. So a bunch of my English teacher friends are calling me up to sub for them while they administered the provincials. And I think again, this was like the first year that they reinstated it since lockdown, which was like kind of a rude awakening to the students who were thinking, "Oh, I'll make it to grade 12 without having to do provincials," and it's like surprise. With those things returning, a sense of normalcy, returns. But then it's like now we're left with the achievement gaps that we've talked about.
That's kind of like the biggest failing that COVID did. As much as COVID was terrible on us, it did shine a light on like the systems put into place where people are failing.
Yeah.
Healthcare, education is the biggest one, and then there's the economy, and then there's the job sector, right? It shone a light into that. The thing that I guess just humans being humans, man, it's the fact that like I just can't wait to be back to quote unquote normal.
Yeah.
When in reality, after that, after all of these like truth revealings that was shown to you, all of these like misfunded
Injustices.
injustices
Like,
that were
pieces of oppression that
Yeah.
were under the normal system.
that were put into place, like for me I would have preferred a new normal than what the normal was post COVID, because clearly why the fuck does it need to why does a fucking pandemic need to happen for you guys to understand that healthcare system is being overbeared, that the education system is not being funded properly, and the job sector is fucked?
Among other things.
Like, why the fuck does like millions of people have to die for you guys to see that, and then you guys want to go back to that?
Privilege.
Huh?
And like again, that rubs me the wrong way because everybody was like, during the pandemic, like during lockdown, they're like, "Oh, we have to get adjusted. This is new normal." Y'all wanted to go back.
Like here,
Y'all went back anyway.
y'all, you guys went back to the shitty ways, anyways.
Moving on to the last point that I wanted to make, at least with No Child Left Behind, is that there's such a stigma around failure
In general,
in general, and like it's
and
it's always been kind of taboo, especially for those more vulnerable communities, like for sure immigrants, like as we know.
we are immigrants.
We are immigrants.
For those who don't know.
Yeah, and needing to be above a certain standard, which is like usually higher for us in our
Yeah.
experience in the home
Yeah.
country. Yeah, but like I hot take, I guess, is that like students should be allowed to fail.
They
Ra-
should be.
yeah, but like caveats, um, like they should be allowed to fail upwards, if you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
in the sense that it all comes down to like assessment. Assessment is kind of like one of the building blocks that, at least for us in education, that we use for learning.
Yeah.
Is that assessment is to assess where students are. And assess where they can go from here. For education students, you'll know this. Don't come for me if I don't remember it correctly. Um, it's assessment as learning, assessment of learning, and assessment for learning.
Okay.
So in the sense that again, using these assessment tools as springboards into, okay, what are the students' next steps? What are their challenges that they need to work on? And where are they at?
Okay.
That's basically the gist of like those
Yeah.
three.
So just giving you kind of a rundown to basically where the student is.
Yeah. And like the thing with like this No Child Left Behind kind of policy is that allowing students to pass despite not showing that they can measure up to it.
Is it a little
Again,
disrespectful to the other students?
it really is. And like again, like we've heard from like several of the comments from the students that we've
Which we
asked,
will be playing for you guys.
which we'll
later
be
on.
playing
Yeah?
for you, yeah, somewhere in the video. If it sets that student up that's not supposed to be passing, they're setting them up for failure again outside of school,
Yeah.
because we don't have these kinds of policies in the workforce.
Yeah.
We
and-
don't have these policies in post-secondary.
Yeah, and it's also putting a precedent to like I don't have to put into the work to like get anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which
In general.
again, isn't becoming a real life.
Yeah, and like isn't this what the boomers were like against?
Mm-hmm.
Not going like pulling up your bootstraps or
Pulling
some
yourself up by the bootstraps.
yeah, or some shit like that. And
Yeah.
like that's not very bootstrappy of you.
Yeah, no, exactly. And again, we as educators should not be afraid to uphold these standards. Because like, again, why are we lamenting the fact that like students are behind
Like why are you just ignoring it in
and then
general?
going and turning around and again, this isn't to put the pressure on like the actual educators themselves, because our hands are tied by regulations in the government.
Yeah,
and
no,
stuff
put the
like that.
pressure on your governors in your
Your education ministries, your school boards,
premiers.
and school divisions and
yeah,
stuff like
in your
that.
premiers and whoever is.
Mm-hmm.
Put it to the government because they're the ones, especially in public school, they're the ones who's setting the precedent to how these schools are funded, how these curriculums are written, especially in the US about like CRT and shit like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as much as you guys don't think the government has a lot of say in
Are you
in
kidding?
education,
Are you
it's
joking?
everything, even in the other than like the private schools, but like everything else is
Again, it's not on the educators. It's not on us as educators to, again, be miracle workers.
yeah.
There's only so much that classroom teachers can do. There's only so much that EAs, if they're there, can do. There's only so much even that administration at a certain school can do.
And like I feel like there's another aspect that needs to be put into place. Parents, teach your kids.
Honestly, yeah.
Teach your kids,
It's like, I
especially during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
If both of you guys had to stay home anyways, why weren't you helping your kids?
Yeah, if you were, like,
If
if
you
you were,
were.
that's great.
Yeah, if you were, that's great. But at the same time, you guys are kind of like the outlier,
Mm.
right? Not
Yeah.
a lot of teacher. Like
No.
I understand, like some like some parents, they have no choice but to kind of just rely on the teacher. Those
Mm-hmm.
circumstances are okay. I understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult. I understand that. But if it's like little Billy is being a little bitch and your fucking helicopter mom's like, no, my little Billy's like perfect and precious, and you guys are just discriminating against my little Billy. That doesn't help anybody.
It really doesn't.
That doesn't help anybody. You think you're being a good parent, you're not. You're
No,
being
you're just setting your kid up for entitlement,
yeah, entitlement and like
like
one
undeserved entitlement, mind you.
yeah, and it was like your kid's gonna grow up as a douchebag. So unless that's what you want,
Because you are one.
yeah, you are one. So as much as I want the parents to alleviate some of the pressure away from the educators, and I do understand we are in very trying times.
That's saying something.
We are in very trying times, but they can't ignore the fact that like education starts at home.
Mm-hmm.
Like
The parents are part of the team for
yeah,
educating a child. Where does your child spend the rest of their days with if they're not at school?
like they're only there for like what 8 hours a day,
Mhm.
5 days out of the week.
Yep.
Oh, where are they for the rest of the day?
You probably at home.
Right?
Yeah.
If they don't have extracurricular, still that
Mhm.
doesn't even still counts. And you're the one who's instilling some of those. As much as my parents were kind of particular when I was growing up, I must admit some of their parenting did work because now if I'm questioning something, I look it up on my own. Like I use context clues because that's the one thing my mom fucking yells at me. It's just like use fucking context clues. I'm just like
Yeah.
okay, and now I use context clues when I'm confused about something or and stuff like that. That's something that like my teacher didn't teach me. It's my parents, admittedly, through a yell. Execution needs help, but the
The
results.
principles were there.
The results were okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, that like education starts at home. Learning starts at home. So the parents need to help the teachers help the kid. That's what PTA is. That's what I thought PTA was. So that the parents and the teachers can like talk and like, hey, this is what Samantha is having issues with.
Mhm.
You might wanna do some math problems with her when she gets home and stuff like that. That's what I thought they were.
Yeah, that's what they're supposed to be.
Oh shit.
Well, no, that's the thing is that again, it's the parents.
It's the parents. It's always the parents.
I mean, I understand again, like I understand that like parents could be busy. Parents like may not have time to really look over what their kids are doing, other
Yeah.
than say, hey, do your homework, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and all that things.
Oh,
And
this or do that, and that kind of thing.
I understand, but at the same time, literally, it takes 18 years for a human to be quote unquote like a part of society.
Yeah, functioning part, and even then, it's
Yeah.
like your brain is still technically still developing.
Like until like late,
Late
like your late
20s.
20s. Yeah. So your kid needs help.
Mm-hmm.
Again, and I'm not trying to shame any of the parents who are in difficult situations. No, my heart goes out to you guys, but you do have to put the effort into it. It's a team. If you want your kid to succeed, you need to be there. You need to be there.
You need to be involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you see that in some of the more I would see that in like some of the more successful, like more academically like
Mhm.
well-off students, is that like
Yeah.
they're the ones who come in for parent teacher, and they're like, oh, how are they doing, like that kind of thing. We would look over their homework every now and then. They seem to be doing fine. How are they in class, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's basically like one end of the spectrum that we see at like parent teachers is that,
Mhm.
and the other end is like the parents who are actually concerned, but their child isn't doing well,
Yeah.
which is a rarity in itself.
I feel like at the end of the day, if you really want your kid to succeed in this, you gotta put in the work. And I'm gonna advocate for the kids here. They never wanted to be here. like,
Yeah.
like they didn't choose to be here. So
Mhm.
help them out a little bit, man. Like,
Yeah, make
it's-
him believe that like it's worth it, because again, that's also what I wanted to get into with like upholding, like letting kids fail and fail upwards
Mhm.
to like on the teacher's end. It's like, don't just be punitive with your grades. Help the kid out to not fail in the long run.
Teach them, like, if you are more involved in your kid's life, they don't media literacy and like netiquette. We'll talk about that in
Another episode.
another episode. Isn't very much instilled into these kids, but people who were millennials like you and me, who had literally had computer classes. You guys know how to do this,
Or should know.
or should know. Help them out. Do the research
Yeah.
for them. Like, do a cute little Google search for them, because some of these kids, they don't even know what they need to know.
No, that's true. And again, allow your kids to fail upwards because it just teaches them to be resilient.
Yeah, and
It
just
teaches them grit. It teaches them that like, oh, you can try again.
yeah, bitch. One F isn't gonna fucking fail them in life, okay?
No, that's the parents. The students,
Students, you're fine. Just a grade is a grade. A grade is a grade.
a grade is a grade, but also that's also a sign that if you're failing, that you need to do better.
Yeah.
Like, and you have to because you're not gonna be coddled for the rest of your life. If you think high school is hard for my high school kids, if you think high school's hard, oh boy, when you graduate, you'll want it all back, most of it.
It's tough out there post secondary, and I've been to university and college.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. Well, again, it's like you need to know to persevere. Like I've got a quote here from, funnily enough, his name is Paul Tough. In an interview with Margaret
Tough.
Went, yeah, exactly. In an interview with Margaret Wenty for the Globe and Mail, they say, and I quote: "Those who say yes, I really stick with tasks, they're much more likely to succeed, even in tasks that involve a lot of what we think of as IQ, right?
Yeah.
Because not everything is like based on like intelligence and that kind of thing, right? But they were talking about that in the article. But like the people who succeed most in life, and we don't mean people like Elon Musk or Donald Trump who are
Those are not
billionaires.
successful people.
Those are people who exploited other people.
Those are
Anyway,
corrupt people.
those people who, like are living their best life.
Within the realm of what you think successful is.
Yeah, which again is not the multi-billionaires.
Not the
It's
multi-billionaires.
they're really not.
They're morally corrupt.
Yeah. But like the most successful people that are less morally corrupt, they're the people who always say try, try, try again, right?
Yeah.
What whatever happened to that? I mean, teachers have been upholding that. Like if you walk into like a classroom, you'll have posters everywhere.
Yeah.
About those
yeah.
those cheesy, but like kind of true. Like if at first you don't succeed, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But like that's kind of the gist of it is that like we need students to actually try. Don't just pass them for the sake of passing them. Right?
And if you do see there's an issue with your kid, don't demonize that issue. Don't bastardize that issue, especially if it does involve their mental health in it, or like any type of learning disability, may it be like dyslexia, which I'm presenting apparently,
Exhibit A. Dyslexia.
dyslexia, or ADHD, or any type of learning. I don't want to call them disabilities, but like,
Students with the cognitive or intellectual challenges.
yeah,
Right?
like give them the support that they need, because those people are gonna need more support than somebody who's neurotypical, somebody
Yeah.
who quote unquote studies better than other people, right? This is the thing with parenting, as far as I can see. Anyways, is like you need to learn how to balance things, especially with education and those types of touchy things. At least for personally for me, I find it very touchy. Learn to be gentle to your
Mhm.
kids, and again, a grade is just a grade. Please, a grade is just a
And
grade.
like I understand that understandably. Okay, it comes from a point of concern, right?
Yeah.
Oh, what if my child doesn't turn out to be anything in life? There are other
There are other
parameters.
avenues. There's
There are other
other
parameters that you can also check. It's not a grade.
yeah, and there's other avenues in life that they could possibly take. Not everybody needs to be a professor. Not everybody needs to be a doctor. Not everybody needs to have a bachelor's
nurse.
degree. Okay, not like let your kids explore what they want to be, because I know at least majority of the parents just want their kid to be happy. So help them be happy by letting them follow what they need to follow. That's kind of what I'm saying here, is because the summary of this entire episode is the kids are the one who's taking the brunt of it.
Mhm.
That is the ugly truth.
Yeah.
And look at it whatever you may like twist it, whatever you want to do, it's still the kids who are getting the short end of the stick.
Mm-hmm.
So they're the ones who need the help.
Yeah.
So give them that help. You remember when you were a teenager? You remember how hard that shit was? How embarrassing that shit is?
Yeah.
How some of the feelings that you were feeling was very so confusing. You think your brain was gonna explode. Your kid is fucking going through that, and some more, unfortunately, because of
Because of how the world is really.
yeah.
And after, especially again after this pandemic, that's the whole catalyst for this episode for me anyway.
Mm-hmm,
Right.
right? And like it's not even just after the pandemic, it's just like the state of the world. Climate change, war, and all of these
Yeah.
things. So like if it's kind of a thing that I try to live by is like if you would show grace to your younger self, show grace to
To
your
your kid.
children.
That is your younger self.
That is your
That
younger
is your
self,
younger
right?
self now.
Like
You have the opportunity.
if you went through some shit, work through that shit with your with your kids in a productive and
Healthy way.
healthy way, okay, you little shits, because y'all might take that the wrong way. But yeah, at least that's my perspective in it as
Mhm.
somebody who is a student and like as somebody who did go to university and college and who dropped out and who was passed along the system. That's kind of like my 2 cents into it and
Mhm.
my message to the teachers, to the educators. You guys are doing your best. I see that. Keep on doing the work because no one else will.
Yeah. My message is to the higher ups from that, and not just the school divisions to school boards. It's the education ministries.
The premiers.
Money, please. Resource, please.
Like as
We
much,
need help.
like as much as you guys are saying, like, oh, all of our citizens need to be educated, then put that money where
Put
it.
the money where your mouth is, please.
How about let's not fucking close the goddamn libraries on Sundays and just give the money to the police.
Please. Not them.
As if they need fucking squat gear. Anyways, we're getting off track.
Getting off track. Another episode.
um,
But yeah, honestly, on my end, I'm always thinking of. Well, I mean, I'm an educator, so it affects me directly. I'm always thinking of like where is like because like, again, we're not the miracle workers here.
yeah,
We
where's the
can't be the
resources?
miracle workers. We're just the people directly involved with the
Mhm.
children.
Yeah.
We need the help here. So this is my message to educate like the higher ups, and again beyond the school divisions and school boards and
Like the
superintendents,
boards,
stuff
the
like
premiers,
that.
Justin
Education
Trudeau,
ministries,
both of the parties.
and like any entity that like has to do with education, because unfortunately I realized this as we were talking, we've built the system on a top down kind of measure where the kid is at the very bottom.
Yeah, and like, isn't school supposed to be like for them? Isn't aren't we supposed to be like teaching them instead of just failing them miserably? You guys are gonna fail them when they grow up, when they go out into society, anyways. Why are you failing them in school as well? Like Jesus fucking Christ, get one right.
Yeah.
Pick a struggle, girl.
Yeah. And like honestly, I would argue that like if you don't fail them in the education area, it'll help them not fail in the the outside world.
Yeah, the job sector is closely linked to people's education.
Mm-hmm.
So
If you say you want to invest in our future,
invest in education.
please,
Invest in
I
like
beg,
invest
show
in
me the receipts.
invest in community programs. Invest in learning. That's all I can say is just invest in learning if that's you, if you guys really want to see change in this fucking society, okay?
Mhm.
Invest in learning.
Yeah. So for this episode, we also wanted to branch out,
Other than us two
other
rambling.
than our other than our rambling, we get like our two perspectives, sure.
Yeah.
But we also asked like some people like close to us or some people that we're colleagues with.
Mhm.
Because again, I'm an educator, can easily ask.
Yeah.
We've got
A couple comments.
a couple of like commentary things that like for the whole, we're listening to them like
Mhm.
for this, it's like kind of echo what we said.
Yeah.
But like it's based on their own experience too.
Yeah.
So they've got their own perspective on it too.
AKA what we're saying aren't one-offs, they're themes.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a theme.
Here's a couple of comments from the Peanut Gallery.
Enjoy.
One of my main issues with policies like No Child Left Behind is that it disregards students who may need more time or who aren't ready to move on to the next level without their full understanding of the subject at hand. It's as if they're being pushed to the next grade without being prepared for the topics that the next grade is teaching. Not everyone learns at the same pace, not everyone learns the same way, but if you're just pushing someone through just to say that they passed, really goes against the point of what a school is and what learning should be. In another note, being allowed to fail is another way of learning. If someone goes through life without experiencing some sort of setback or failure, then they will not be prepared later on how to cope with such failures and learn how to learn from it. Schools are a place where you can fail in a safe environment and not have major consequences other than trying again.
I went through an 18-month program from May of 2021 to October of 2022, so during the peak of COVID. My program was only in person when working at the clinic and seeing patients or in the labs. The theory classes were all online. Aside from being able to stay in the comfort of my own space while still being in class, I was able to keep up with taking care of myself. I cooked, I ate, and cleaned up during lectures. In my case, it helped too that I was away from home, so I was doing everything alone, and it would be impossible for me to pull off studying and everything else in life if I was in school all day and had to come home.
Some of the biggest challenges for students post lockdown include their 2 years loss of emotional and social growth interacting with peers and other adults in a personal setting, having heavy reliance on devices such as phones, iPads, and other technologies that would be inappropriate in a classroom unless it is a tool that is to be used for learning. Another challenge that students sometimes face is going back to a physical, in person, in class style of learning. Um, Many students during those years, especially those transitioning from grade 7, grade 8, grade 9, so like middle years to high school years, a lot of them don't know how to, or I should say, didn't know how to take a test, write notes, um, essentially be a quote unquote traditional student. Not that there's anything wrong with being a non traditional student, but with the way our school system is set up, they need to know the skills of note taking, test taking, and listening for extended periods of time and not be distracted by technology. As educators, we have our work cut out for us to essentially play catch up. Social and emotional development is something that happens over time. So we are just there to facilitate what is right, what is wrong, what are the contexts of a social setting. Is this appropriate for what we're talking about? Is this appropriate talking to another peer in such a way? Um, we, I don't want to say police technology usage, but we need to be able to essentially teach them that not everything is technology reliant and they need to develop skills that are not technology based.
Well, as a student myself, I don't fully agree with policies such as the no failing policy. I do fully understand that it was implemented with good intentions, but the way other students are treating this policy is unfair. This policy gained more insight in the early days of COVID 19 with online classes and whatnot. I did see it as a way to prevent students from failing their classes, but as we gradually went back to what we defined as quote unquote the norm, students began using this policy to their own advantage. For example, I know of someone in my school who was supposedly failing their science course, but then I heard that they passed apparently not too long ago. When I caught word of this, I was shocked to my core. I heard that they were worried that they would fail this class, but yet by the end of the semester, they somehow miraculously received their credit and passed. I didn't know how to react since I heard how their grade was far from passing even. I didn't want to compare, but in this case, I felt as though I worked harder than them in my own science class. Yet, since I worked so hard, but they didn't have to? This was a question I asked myself often because, again, I had to work hard to earn my own credit in my science class. But if they passed with a grade lower than mine, why should I even try? I believe that there are many flaws to this policy, as to let students pass their classes with barely any work handed in is actually mind-blowing.
Thank you again for all of our commenters. Your insights are very much appreciated. And we just want to end this episode to a message to the students.
Yeah, since we've done, a rant to the parents and a rant to the higher ups.
We've talked to the grown-ups.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk to you guys now.
Now, yeah, it's you guys' turn. So, I know it's been a hard couple of. Well, I mean, it's always been a hard couple of years, and I get that school is challenging,
To say the least.
to say the least.
Put it in
Um,
nicely.
Put it with the little bow. When you walk across that stage and finally flip that tassel over, boy, is it gonna be such a liberating experience.
Yeah.
And to get there, you have to go through now,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have to persevere,
Yeah, and
as with life.
and I kind of echoed this in last episode that kids these days are feeling hopeless and they feel very angry, and you should be. Honestly, you should be. You have every right to be, but just remember be kind, just not to yourself but also to people around you, because that's how you learn is you listen to other people, you see their perspective, and that's how you grow. That's how you're able to reach the places that you want to reach, the goals that you want to meet. Like, as much as learning and information is kind of demonized and placed in a very dark and tight spot, it's still a way for you to get through life. I am a big advocate for educating yourself, whether that be in fine arts or STEM or humanities. Learning something new every day just makes you, as much as it makes you see the dark in the world, it'll help you see the light in the world so much more and appreciate it so much more.
And again, that's what makes it worth it,
Yeah.
right? That's
Take it from somebody who has been in your spot. Just hold on for a little bit longer. As cheesy as this is gonna get, it does get better. It will get a lot harder than it gets better before it gets better, but it will get better. Just hold on.
don't be afraid of those challenges. Yeah, they'll test you, but you're gonna learn something from it.
And you're not alone. I know maybe all of your grown-ups around you are like assholes and they don't listen to you or they don't answer your questions. But there will be people out there. There will be grown-ups up there who will be willing to help you and who will be willing to guide you the right way. It's just gonna take a little bit of time to find them and a little bit of courage too as well. So just be kind, be brave, hold on.
Yeah, and if you don't have anyone else yet, we believe in you.
Yeah,
You have us.
I always believe in you. I
Mhm.
will. I always will. Okay? Anyways, going away from the mushy stuff. I guess that's it for this episode of The Case.
Tune in next episode as we ride into the danger zone.
Code yellow, everyone. Okay, that's Tree signing off.
And that's Mick signing off.
Bye.
Bye.